Hello, everybody. You guys can all hear me okay? Quick thumbs up, because this is the first time I'm actually doing this on stage with a blind. All right, awesome. Great to have everybody on board. I'd like to do a quick introduction. My name is Vinayak Shastri, and I'm one of the product line managers or a principal product managers doing cloud detection and response for CrowdStrike. So today, we're primarily be talking about reimagining cloud security. Just a quick check on the visual. Just want to make sure that everybody can see it. Okay, there we go. We are going to talk about reimagining cloud detection and response and with agentic experience as well. So we'll talk about a little bit of both. The agenda at a high level is to actually talk about the latest trends in the security space. We'll talk a little bit about the adversaries, what they're actually up to, challenges faced by the SOC team in order to defend against these adversaries, gaps in today's cloud detection and response solutions that already exist, and why we're enhancing ours as well, and how has CrowdStrike gone ahead and re-architected the CDR space. And we'll go through a quick demo and talk a little bit about the agentic experience around it as well as a part of today's session. So let's actually jump into today's latest trends. So everybody's heard about Scattered Spider or Crazy Panda at the end of the day. Come to our booth, we'll introduce you to some of these adversaries at the end of the day. So Scattered Spider in 2023 accounted for 1/3 of all the cloud threats that our Overwatch team and MDR team actually detected across. That's actually a huge number. But in 2024, that number dropped down to 13%. Does that mean they actually slowed down? Not really. What happened is there were other adversaries contributing and increasing that particular space. So we're now seeing a overrise of mature adversaries coming into that landscape and then talking about how do we actually build cloud threats in place. So the challenging aspect around this is they're not just talking about the ecosystem like the traditional way. They're actually coming in to build an entire threat ecosystem within the cloud infrastructure. They're using the building blocks of cloud against us at the end of the day, and we have to figure out the right way to defend ourselves. Let's take an example of what we actually looked around for Genesis Panda. We started looking at their trends in 2024. At a high level, they started looking at exfiltrating credentials, either through instance metadata service or through other means, and collecting credentials from the cloud at the end. And in April, they transitioned that into breaking into customers' cloud accounts and then accessing their cloud infrastructure and VMs. They did not stop over there. What they did was they laterally moved across the systems, built their own infrastructure within the customer's ecosystem, and connected them to the C2 domains, or the control domains at the end of the day. How did this change and enhance? By March 2025, we saw a complete change in persistence, which means we've started seeing threat actors establish SSH keys within the infrastructure. Persistence log into that infrastructure without having to touch an endpoint at all. And that was the crazier part. They're using your own infrastructure against attacks that they want to actually perform. So how do we defend against this more specifically? Well, let's actually talk about, now that we've seen the ecosystem play in, how does AI enhance this, right? Everybody has seen the evolution of GenAI, large language model, help with various things at the end of the day. It's being used for good and bad at the end. And adversaries are also leveraging AI, improving their speed, efficiency, starting from reconnaissance. Enhanced reconnaissance, something that used to take hours or days, now actually take minutes or even seconds for that matter at the end. Vulnerability exploitation. Think about somebody in the past that had to do vulnerability exploit in order to reverse engineer a vulnerability at the end of the day, create a script, Today, I can just feed it into an LLM and then have a script ready for me. Does that actually mean the script's actually perfect? No. But what it's actually doing is actually closing the gap between an exposure or a vulnerability exposed and an attack that could actually potentially happen. What does this mean for us as defenders? It means the time to closing the gap is reduced, right? Malware and advancements. We've seen this day in and day out where they've been able to build tools that actually helps them translate across various infrastructure within seconds at the end of the day. Technical support. Everybody uses GenAI and LLM in order to enhance their skills. What has happened is the entry has gotten much lower at the end of the day. There is a lower barrier to entry into breaching the cloud. All of this has changed the game, both for attackers or the adversaries and for us as defenders. So let's take a look at what has changed in the landscape of defenders. What do you have to deal with very specifically? According to our CrowdStrike threat report and 2025 threat report, we've actually observed that a median break-in time has actually been lowered to 48 minutes. Now let that sink in, even for what? The fastest break-in time that we've seen is somewhere around 51 seconds. Take some time to realign that with security operations expectations in terms of SLAs. How quickly can you respond to a particular detection, let alone detect it, right? And how quickly can you actually respond in real time in order to remediate it? So 51 seconds was one of the fastest observed breach time. The cloud makes it even more challenging. Why? Number one, no inline sensors. If it was just sensors in the virtual machine compute at the end of the day, you could potentially get some real-time data. But in the cloud, we're actually relying on events from CloudTrail. How do you get inline sensors from the cloud? Two, complex and siloed investigation. Everybody knows how many products are consuming your CloudTrail, flow logs at the end of the day, identity that is being sourced from another product, right? Where does this all come together? Worse, it's actually piecemeal, which means you have these puzzles coming from each places and you have to put them together. Instead of having to respond to an attack, you're now trying to figure out what an attack actually looks like. And then finally, once you've actually put the pieces together, responding to it. Unlike traditional workload protection sensors, where you can actually go ahead and kill a process, quarantine a particular host or a file within that particular workload, how do you address responding to cloud APIs? How do you quarantine an identity role? How do you go ahead and quarantine an S3 bucket? Right? All of these are challenges that are actually faced by defenders on a day-to-day basis. How do we change it? How are we reimagining cloud detection and response? If we go out to the first problem, what if we could see the control plane activity in real time? Right? There are ways to actually pull in CloudTrail logs in real time as well. Complex and siloed investigation. This is the biggest challenge. People put an AI around everything, but AI needs to have context of everything before it actually gives you a proper response. Otherwise, it'll only give you a response of how much it actually understands or knows. So this includes understanding the data plane, the control plane, flow logs, audit logs at the end of the day, Kubernetes logs, understanding how they all come together with proper timestamp. Imagining having a centralized location where you could actually correlate that. And then finally, having the same automated response that enables you to accelerate response time in the cloud, where you could actually go ahead and quarantine a particular bucket or go ahead and revoke a rogue access token in place. So what we've actually done is reimagined CrowdStrike's Falcon Cloud Security. We always think from an adversary point of view. What does it mean to hunt for attacks from an adversary point? What is Scattered Spider actually thinking about in place? What is Crazy Panda actually thinking through? Detect early activity through indicators of attack in the cloud. Reconnaissance attacks, these can actually come through early in the process before a breach actually happens. Understand the timeline. and then stop the breaches right in the workload using some of the workload sensor protection or the ability to use fusion, right? Finally, enable your SOC team to help investigate that with timeline. Understand the sequence of events of what exactly happened in scale. And then at scale built-in automation, we'll talk about each one of these in place. But overall, we think about two things. One is adversary focused. Two, prevention first. In order for you to go ahead and prevent a particular attack or block a particular attack, we don't want you to wait. Prevent first and then figure out where that breach actually went through. How do you remediate it during a long-term process? To meet the needs and speed of modern adversaries, we've gone ahead and re-envisioned what it means to actually have cloud detection and response. Number one, real-time visibility and detection, both from an ingestion standpoint and from a detection standpoint. We'll talk about this in terms of what is a new engine that we're actually introducing. Two, correlation and contextualization. It is very important to correlate a particular threat by bringing down all the risk associated with it, starting from assets, understanding what is the layout of the asset. Is it a container? What is it running? What's the namespace around it? Understanding the risk associated with those assets as well. Bringing in all sorts of logs from CloudTrail to flow logs and aggregating them together, then using machine learning, then using agentic AI to actually make sense of those logs. And then finally, the last piece of the puzzle, starting from detection and response, the response part of it, which means now I have to be able to go ahead and automatically respond to some of these attacks as they actually come in. You could potentially build some with manual intervention as required, but execute an API response as a part of the strategy where you're putting down the flames right there and then trying to figure out what is the long-term remediation strategy. So to do that, we're introducing a new engine within cloud detection and response. Starting from ingestion, as I mentioned earlier, the logs are actually streamed and the detection is applied while it's actually in stream. Two, this reduces the detection from minutes to seconds at the end of the day. This is very important in order to go ahead and respond back to a threat that's completing in 51 seconds. And this is tested and used by Overwatch team and MDR team over the last decade. And they almost ingest 5 trillion events per day and ran this at scale. So we have this built in within the product today, and we're actually launching the real-time detection as a part of the new launch. Two is the unified detection part. We can't have silos anymore. Identity in one place, cloud detections in another place, where sensor-based detections in another place. Most of you use different vendors in order to collectively put those detections together. The challenge then becomes, how are you going to aggregate these detections together, make sense of it, right? A SOC cannot view a detection from a single point of view. They have to look at it from a holistic angle. Same thing with agentic. Or if you're using AI, you can't provide it a siloed approach. You have to provide it the complete feedback. So how do you enrich that investigation with unified detection? So correlation becomes more important. Finally, accelerating that response. Now that you have actually provided more context around it, it's then we apply Charlotte AI to go in and provide summarized details with context. Runtime actually provides all kinds of context, so Charlotte will actually go ahead and triage a detection as soon as it actually pops up with complete summarization in terms of what happened, why, and what is the response to be taken. Expert-led decisions at the end of the day, where you actually have agentic AI coming in, and I'll talk a little bit later during the session in terms of the different agentic experience built into the product. In essence, what we are doing is bringing in agentic experience to go ahead and correlate. Tell me what happened. You run manually at the end of the day, experience it from a SOC perspective, reduce the SOC time from maybe 60 minutes to 60 seconds at the end. And finally, leveraging Falcon Fusion SOAR in order to respond to some of these attacks in real time, right? We're not going to be able to sit down and then detect a particular detection, triage it over time, and then respond back to it manually. So how do I actually build that into my change in order to actually do real-time detection and response, and then triage it to figure out what is the long-term strategy for it. So that is where we actually go ahead and integrate it with Falcon Fusion with out-of-the-box response flow that has been built into the product. There is always concerns about automation at the end of the day, where people are automation on end-to-end could actually disrupt my business. Yes, you can actually have human in the loop at the end of the day to validate some of these systems as they go through. This also accelerates the whole system as things actually progress. So finally, I'd like to take you through a demo. So let's actually get into a quick demo. Wow.
This demo reflects common tradecraft used by cloud-conscious adversaries like Scattered Spider. After compromising a developer's AWS credentials through social engineering, a threat actor uses the Cloud Shell command line to create a new SSH key pair, establish an IAM role with administrative privileges, and launch an EC2 instance with the privilege role attached, achieving persistent administrative access in under 1 minute. In the Falcon console, we can see detections from the suspicious activities. However, what's more interesting is we can see the graph view of the attack unfolding in real time, providing complete visibility into the threat actor's movements. Our detection engine enriches cloud telemetry data with asset inventory context to accurately identify malicious behavior patterns. Falcon had never seen this developer using Cloud Shell for deployments before, immediately flagging this as anomalous. Additionally, the specific sequence of the threat actor's actions, creating an administrative IAM profile, attaching it to launch an unmanaged EC2 instance with a new SSH key pair, clearly indicated highly unusual activity that deviated from normal baseline behavior. Based on this activity, Falcon Platform immediately invoked automated Fusion workflows to contain the threat. A workflow was invoked to deny further access for the developer's compromised credential, effectively cutting off the attacker's entry point. To take a step further and prevent additional damage, another Fusion workflow was invoked to stop the EC2 instance from being launched while preserving the instance disk for forensic investigation. The Falcon console provides a detailed timeline view of the attack. The threat actor attempted to log in again via the Cloud console, but their access was denied with an error message. This is how Falcon Cloud Security is empowering you to stop the adversary at the speed that modern attacks demand.
Okay, let's actually switch back to the PowerPoint mode and then talk a little bit about the demo. As you actually saw, all the way from detection, enhancement in terms of triage using both Charlotte AI and Agentic AI, we've been able to respond back to a threat and then triage it much easily at the end of the day, right? A lot of these responses are optional, but we always let customers make a decision. Do you want manual intervention? How comfortable are you with revoking rogue tokens at the end of the day, right? So it's very important to go from detection to response in seconds without having to wait. And you have Charlotte AI that comes in later to actually help you with triaging the whole content altogether. Okay, now. Okay. Trying to go back to the PowerPoint. Okay. So now let's talk about agentic experience in the whole system, right? Now that we've seen the whole experience going from detection all the way to response in seconds at the end of the day, agentic comes in multiple ways. And CrowdStrike has actually launched agentic AI bots. Number one, it's actually helping you increase the productivity of your SOC team. Let it be doing manual triage and then responding, or doing a triage after the response. There is a triage time that actually comes into play. When we bring all the data together, an expert AI agent saves weeks of time from a SOC perspective. And number two, this means to say your mean time to respond if you're trying to do things manually is actually reduced. Our whole goal at the end of the day is to help you reduce your MTTR for every detection and help you automate the triage as much as possible. And finally, the most important piece that actually comes in is combating skill shortage. You have SOC admins that are actually looking at SOC across the board. They're looking at platforms, identity, on-prem, cloud, SaaS, and they can't be an expert on every level. While we have actually observed some customers actually carve out cloud security operations to actually go look at cloud specific, contextualizing it with the cloud data, it's even more important at this point because you have a shortage of SOC admins that actually understand the cloud world really well. And then finally, all of these pre-trained agents come out of the box from a security data perspective, so where you can actually go ahead and have a triage-specific agent that will help you triage across the board. You're not only looking at a siloed detection, but you're looking at a detection from a complete context. Threat hunting agent, vulnerability agent, response agent at the end of the day. How do you want to bring in? The way that these agents have been trained and scaled has been through our MDR and incident response team. So Overwatch team and Falcon Complete team at the end of the day does this in and out, and years of research has actually gone in, and we've built our own intel books and adversary best practices at the end of the day. So this helps. These agents are just getting started. We plan on building more and more agents as they actually come in. They may have overlapping capabilities, but their whole goal is to help you reduce your mean time to respond to a particular threat, regardless of where it actually happens. And finally, I'd like to bring you back to the whole agentic AI security platform that we're actually building together. We start off with the single unified sensor in place that actually sits on Linux, Windows, Mac, Kubernetes, and containers at the end of the day. Helps you associate and lay out with an enterprise level graph that tells you what is the risk associated, what is the asset details associated with it. And you then have detection across the board that actually overlays endpoint detection, cloud detection, SaaS detection, identity detection. You saw cloud threat detection and response as just a single component of it. All of this kind of merges in to become either MDR and CDR together, where our managed detection team is looking at it, or cloud detection team will be looking at it. And over-encompassing the entire thing is our agentic AI and AI agents, which is now getting the complete context, without having to lose context on identity versus cloud versus SaaS. The breach might have happened at a SaaS application level where the identity breach has actually happened. Across the board now it has spawned into cloud to workloads. Now they're actually breached, laterally moved into the cloud. When you're looking at silos, you're only figuring out what those silos actually mean. But when you're looking at it from a holistic point of view, you go down to remediation instantly. Second thing you figure out is, how do I make sure this doesn't happen again? What is the remediation part of it? And it's very important for us to have a holistic view in order to get to that level of details. So that's the session. Thank you for your time today. And would love to spend some more time in the demo. Please stop by our booth. And if you'd like to take a look at our adversaries and then take a look at some of the details around adversaries, we're more than happy to talk to you around in there. Thank you very much.